All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Ask the Professionals Q&A. My name is Heidi Sittelmeyer, and I'm the Director of Online and Community Connections here at the Arthritis Foundation. I facilitate the Live Yes Connect group here in Los Angeles, and I'm also a patient living with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis persisting into adulthood. I also live with osteoarthritis and a couple of other comorbidities. That's a mouthful, isn't it? So Ask the Professionals Q&A is an interactive video series where we solicit questions from the arthritis patient community and bring them to leading experts to help get our questions answered. So today, it's my great pleasure to have Dr. Erin Nitschke, who is a professor of exercise science at Laramie County Community College. She holds certifications in, buckle up, I've got a lot of acronyms here, NFPT CPT, NSCA CPT. She's an ACE health coach. She's also a fitness nutrition specialist, a therapeutic exercise specialist, and PNI. Wow, that's a mouthful, which also has me very confident that she is well-versed in what we're about to tackle today. So Erin is also an editorial author for IDEA and FPT, where she writes regularly on topics related to personal training and health coach skills building, behavior change, and career success. Today, we'll be answering your questions about all things physical activity and arthritis, including how to find the best activities for you to stay healthy and active, plus learn tips to stay motivated and how to create a well-rounded fitness routine to promote strength and endurance. So I'm absolutely interested in this topic because, like many, I have put on, the COVID more than 15 and are not exercising as much as I can. So it's perfect timing to look at this and jump in. And one of the things, Dr. Erin, that I loved, I did go on your website. There was a quote that you have on your website that says, "It's not simply about hitting the gym. It's about discovering inner strength, harnessing personal potential, and exercising the courage to pursue a meaningful goal." And I love that. So welcome, Dr. Erin. So are you ready to tackle our questions today?
I am. Thank you for asking me to do this. I'm really excited to be here.
All right, fantastic. So the first question from our community is, I want to keep my joints flexible and strong. What does a well-rounded routine look like for someone with arthritis? Like, for example, how many days a week should I be working out? How long should I devote to strength training, balance, flexibility, cardio, all that good stuff?
Right. That's such a great question. And it's a common one that I get. And there are exercise guidelines out there. So for a well-rounded exercise program, we really like to see this balance of aerobic or your cardiorespiratory endurance. So kind of think about those heart and lungs, right? And then also that strengthening component. So looking at the muscular system and making sure we're keeping our joints strong, our muscles strong, all of that. And so there are guidelines that exist, but one of the pieces of advice I always give to individuals is, though the guideline says, for example, for aerobic conditioning, we want you to accumulate 150 minutes of moderate activity a week, whether that's walking, it's running, it's anything like that, anything cardiorespiratory that kind of gets your heart rate up a little bit. That's the guideline. But at the same time, I like to have people take kind of that introspective look of, what is my activity level right now? Where am I at? Am I coming from a completely sedentary lifestyle? Then that threshold of 150 minutes a week is going to seem like a lot. And it's a great way to set somebody up for failure, to be like, well, this is what the guideline says. So I try to educate people to say, this is what research has shown to produce numerous health benefits. But something's always better than nothing. So if you have 10 minutes, get up and take a 10-minute walk. Specifically for this population, for those suffering with this osteoarthritis and that joint inflammation, we really want to see that moderate exercise level that aligns with their pain tolerance. So what is that level of discomfort? What is that level of pain? And during flare-ups, it's absolutely it's okay for you to just not do something. Maybe it looks more like gentle range of motion or some dynamic recovery. We do want to see some of that muscular strength training component. So at least 2 days a week, focusing on large muscle groups, anywhere from 2 to 4 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions, but making sure that you're able to move through a pain-free range of motion. Pain should not be associated with your exercise experience. And if it is, then we need to reduce the volume, we need to reduce the intensity. And one of the things that exercise professionals will guide individuals who have this condition is to avoid those high intensity exercises. So things like real jarring exercises. So plyometrics and jumping and running even can be too much on the body, particularly with those with lower body arthritis for sure. So making it well-rounded, kind of thinking, okay, heart and lungs, and then our muscular strength component. And as always, flexibility is very important.
Great. Awesome. As you were speaking, I was thinking for a minute there, with physical activity, it also can be activities around the home. I used to have this vacuum cleaner that was a beast, and that was a workout to run that
absolutely
through the whole house. And I'm like, okay, there's some resistance, and there's
yep. and that's such a good point too, because I think sometimes when we say the word exercise, it can be intimidating to people. And there is a difference between physical activity and exercise. Exercise is typically these structured activities with this very intentional focus and goal. That's great. I mean, exercise professional, that's what I do. But we don't want to discount the value of physical activity and just moving the body. The body was meant to move. And that might even come down to looking at how many hours a day you're sedentary and seeing like, okay, every hour I'm going to get up and take a 5-minute walk. That's physical activity. And you do that enough times, you can very gradually build up that endurance level. And that goes a long way to improving health.
Yeah, I actually have a reminder on my watch. That's the stand reminder.
Yes, me too. Yep.
Sometimes I ignore it, but a lot of times, okay, it's a problem.
It's time to get up.
Yep. So let's jump to the next question. So what are the best low impact arthritis-friendly exercises for beginners, gym goers, athletes, and everyone in between? So what would you recommend?
So I really am a fan of walking. I think we underestimate the power of walking. It's very rhythmic. It's involving all your major muscle groups, lower body. You're burning some calories, so you're kind of getting the heart rate up a little bit. Swimming is another amazing activity for individuals with arthritis, and we can't discount the resistance factor with water. It's greater than that of air. And so if you're at a point where maybe walking is a little too much, it maybe hurts your knees, it hurts your ankles, maybe you've got some hip osteoarthritis, certainly think about doing some water exercises, because that's as close to zero gravity as you can possibly get on Earth. So jumping in a pool might not be such a bad idea. And there is that resistance component. Biking is also another really good option, even if it's a recumbent bike or just a stationary cycling bike. That's really helpful as well, because one, you're moving the joints. That's really what we want to do, is to kind of prevent that stiffness. But then it's also benefiting your heart and lungs. And that's really important too. But other activities that maybe aren't as aerobically inclined would be things like Pilates, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, all of those, because then there's a balance component too. And with things like yoga, that's a very, there's a strength component to it. There's balance, there's posture, there's all of those things that are good for the body, but also the mind. So any one of those activities are really great options for someone that has some arthritis concerns.
Great. You underscored a couple of my favorites. Pre-COVID, it was definitely water aerobics, getting in, doing deep water with the belt. So,
Yep.
And you can really work yourself out.
Yes, you can. You can work up a sweat.
Yeah, you definitely can. You can sweat within the water. And then, of course, I've been dabbling with Tai Chi and yoga, and I found that very beneficial as well. But definitely, I know as I'm listening today, I'm listening for the strength training, and because I want to get back into that. That's something right. But anyways, enough about me. So let's continue though around the water exercise, because our water exercise is as beneficial as land-based ones. The person wrote, "I'd like to give it a try. I just don't feel like I'm ever putting in the same effort as I do when I'm doing a typical workout."
That's a great question. And so when it comes to the effort, don't think about it because you're not comparing apples to apples here. It's two very different environments. It's kind of like if you're a runner and you're a road runner or you're a trail runner. Those aren't really apples to apples. Same thing when it comes to land-based versus water. So the effort's going to feel different. It doesn't have to be the same to be beneficial. We really want to focus on movement. And as I already mentioned, water does offer an element of resistance. And then you also have to think about fighting to stay afloat. That's not something we have to do on land, right? We have the benefit of gravity. We are anchored all the time, provided there are no slips and falls and things like that. We are anchored. In water, that's not the case. And so your body has to work a little bit differently to be able to break that surface tension of water. So absolutely, it is as beneficial. And if anything, offers a way for somebody to engage in activity when land-based exercises are just too painful, or they find that the outcome of those produces too much next day soreness, then water is certainly an option for sure. There absolutely is beneficial.
Great. Awesome. So our next question from our community is, I just don't have the time to work out every day. How can I keep limber and active on days I can't devote 30 minutes or more to exercising?
Okay, that's an awesome question. And here's the good news. Exercise is cumulative. So if you don't have 30 minutes, that's okay. Break it up into 2 15-minute bouts, 3 10-minute bouts. Break it up into 5-minute increments. It can be, we also underestimate the value of what we call NEAT. So the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's the calories you burn outside of just your intentional exercise. It's things like getting up and moving around the house. It's taking the stairs. It's standing up every hour at your desk. It's maybe it's putting away laundry. It's doing laundry. It's chasing your kids around. It's chasing your dogs around, whatever the case is. So that creates a metabolic demand so that there are calories being burned and you're still moving those joints. You're still moving. And that's what's really important. So exercise is cumulative. Get up, do a couple minutes here and there. You can find some really creative ways to infuse your day with physical activity that does not, one, have to take place inside of a gym. That isn't always necessary. Depends on what your goals are ultimately. But if this is about movement, just get up and enjoy it. That's the biggest factor here is, do you enjoy it? Because an exercise you enjoy is an exercise you're going to commit to. So don't think about it as, oh gosh, I have to have an entire 30 minutes to be able to elicit a health benefit. That's not the case. Research has demonstrated that for us over and over again. And so the one thing I would encourage is if you're going to break it up in bouts, like try to keep the intensity very similar between those bouts. So let's go with light to moderate intensity, and make sure you carry that intensity over into the next bout of exercise. But again, 10 minutes of just even like light marching in place, walking around, maybe you do 10 minutes of yoga in your office. Anything like that, that's physical activity versus exercise. They're two very different categories of movement, but both beneficial.
Yeah, I can see myself dancing full out at home, not in the office, but
bust a move. That's fine. That burns calories.
That's some fun, right?
Yep.
All right, great. Our next question. My left ankle is often inflamed, and I also have bone spurs. I often don't know if I should rest it or keep it moving. How do I balance movement and rest when pain is flaring?
So when it comes to pain, if pain is present, or if you're in the middle of exercising and it becomes painful, the advice is to stop. Just stop, because it could mean that there's a flare up going on. And also, I always advocate for people to work with their primary care provider, especially if there's some anatomical thing like a bone spur. That can certainly, depending on where it's located, that they've been known to tear tendons, they've been known to tear muscles, all of that. So you want to make sure that you're working within a pain-free range of motion. And of course, if you have a physical therapist or somebody that you've been going to that offers these therapeutic modalities that would be outside of what an exercise professional does, absolutely work with that individual and always, always monitor your pain level. And this is where that mindfulness component is really, really helpful. And to kind of do like a check-in with yourself, like, how am I feeling today? Where does it hurt? And I always tell my clients, whether they're dealing with arthritis or not, is to do a body scan, head to toe. Close your eyes and think about, okay, where am I noticing tension in my body? Where am I noticing tightness? Is something not feeling right? And really pay attention to those cues. If it's painful, please rest it. Absolutely, please rest it. Because if you don't and you push it, then what's going to happen? You're just going to get in this vicious cycle of never being pain-free. And that's not ultimately what we want. And exercise, even though some believe, if you're not versed in the research or the benefits of it, are like, oh, it's just going to make my arthritis worse. It really won't. But you've got to make sure that you're not doing it in times of pain or flare-ups.
Yeah. And I think you're pointing to something really important. We've got to listen to our bodies, but also know that, gentle range of motion.
Yes.
Because our joints also need that movement, or else they, the joints lock up, they get frozen, you lose muscle tone. So it's important to find that balance, but and listen to our bodies.
Yeah. And always reduce your volume and intensity. The great thing about exercise is there are these variables we can manipulate, right? So one day we go a little bit harder, but the next day we're like, oh, that isn't where I'm at today. That's not where my body is able to perform today. So I'm going to go ahead and back off. Always adjust the volume and intensity. You do not have to work out at the same volume, the same level every single day, every single time to be healthy or to keep your body healthy.
Great. Awesome. All right. Our next question is, floor exercises tend to aggravate my knees, even with thick yoga pads. Any suggestions?
I would absolutely recommend not doing those exercises. If there is a situation or a position or exercise that requires you to get into that sort of kneeling position, it might be best to see if you can modify that exercise and do it in a standing position or a seated position, even using something like a stability ball or, stability balls can be kind of comfortable because they offer such a nice cushion on the hips and on that glute complex. But seeing if you can modify, because if there is something that causes discomfort, you're not going to enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to continue to do it. And then you really reap no benefit. So I would recommend just avoiding that. If it is something like in yoga, there's gentle yoga practices that you can follow that don't require you to be in kind of that quadruped position, that hands and knees position.
Yeah, great. Yeah. And I know for myself, definitely modifying exercises. I would say I would think there's a modification for almost anything.
Honestly, there really is. There is a regression and a progression for every exercise under the sun. I mean, truly there is. And there are ways to challenge, and there are ways that you can reduce that intensity a little bit. And so it's really about, is your form correct? Is really what we worry about the most before we worry about intensity or anything like that. Is the form correct? Is the posture correct? Is the balance okay? Can this person perform this exercise? So being mindful of those things is really important because it comes down to form. Because if you don't use good form, or something is painful, then you're likely not going to have good form because you're compensating for the pain and discomfort that you're feeling.
Yeah, and working with a professional, they can actually point out because I know, I'll say at least for myself, that I may compensate and not even realize I'm compensating, right?
Mm-hmm.
By working with either a personal trainer or a physical therapist, they can point out exactly, oh wait, you're putting your weight is so much on that side. Let's balance it out, right?
100%. We have that kind of objective. Yep. We can see it.
All right, awesome. Our next question from our community is, before COVID, I was working out several times a week. Then COVID hit, and my ability to go to the gym and motivation kind of went away along with it. I still feel it's too risky to work out at a gym. What are some ways to reclaim my fitness at home? And how long do you think it would take for me to get back to my pre-COVID shape? I don't know if you can really answer that part of the question, but I would love to hear your perspective on this question.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely valid and fair question. And I think the person who asked this question is in a very similar place as many of my clients, students, colleagues are. They don't quite feel ready, and that's okay. You need to honor that, and you need to be okay with being in that space. It's very important because, again, it's going to detract from the enjoyment factor. And we want people to enjoy movement. We don't want it to feel arduous and like it's work. As far as how long it will take, progress is not easily defined in sort of this sweeping generalization. It is very much defined by the user, by the individual person who's going through a program. And it depends on what the program looks like, the volume. It also has a nutritional component as well. What does that end of things look like versus just, because it isn't just about the movement. It's got to have this nice balance of sleep, nutrition, movement, stress management, mindfulness. All of those things make up components of our health and contribute to progress. So it is very individualized, but it is about progress and not perfection. So as long as you keep that eye moving forward about, and celebrating those small wins along the way, you will make progress for sure. There's no way you won't. In terms of how to kind of recapture your active routine at home, as many challenges as COVID presented us, not only as individuals, but as an industry as a whole, it also offered us some pretty unique opportunities to be innovative. And we see a lot of apps available. There's a lot of streaming services. There's exercise on demand. There's all kinds of things out there. And sometimes it takes just sitting down and looking at what those options are. Some are of greater quality and are more vetted by the industry than others are. And that is certainly something to keep in mind. YouTube, even, believe it or not, for as much silliness that goes on in YouTube, there are some awesome resources that are gentle yoga, that are all kinds of different things. The Pop Sugar Fitness channel offers free stuff all the time, and they're actually pretty decent. So there are those opportunities as well. And there are a lot of health professionals that do offer virtual services, because as an industry, we were forced to pivot, right? As a primarily face-to-face industry, and that's how we have made our mark in the world, really. We had to pivot and go virtual. And so a lot of us health and exercise professionals are like, maybe I'm going to adopt a hybrid model. So there are those opportunities as well.
Great. Yeah. Similarly, the Arthritis Foundation, as the director of, online and community connections, one of my accountabilities is our connect groups, which met in person in communities, and now we do them virtually.
Right.
I'll say that's a silver lining out of COVID. And what you were sharing about the different apps and virtual classes that are out there, I know a number of different gyms you can jump in on there. And the Arthritis Foundation, we also just recently launched our Yes tool. It's your exercise solutions, which is, we've got a library of different videos that you can come to our site and workouts, so that they're very much targeted towards being arthritis friendly. So I'll put the word in right now. Go to arthritis.org/yes tool, TOOL, and you can check those out. As well as we have, the Vim app, which it can support you it's a goal setting app. So any goal that you want to, take on and gain traction on, it's a great tool, so that you can download through, either Google Play or the Apple Store and explore that. And we have content that's related to different things, including physical activity. All right, so that's it for that PSA. I inserted in there. But our next question is, if I wanted to invest in one piece of gym equipment, what would you recommend?
I think at the top of my list is proper footwear. It's critical. And individuals need to make sure they purchase some sort of footwear that is from a reputable retailer. And there's a lot of places that will offer a free gait analysis too. They will be able to tell you if you're an overpronator or an underpronator, or if you're a foot slapper or something like that. Proper footwear, we put so much demand for performance on our feet. And though they make up a very small part of the human body in terms of its size and surface area, they carry us. And I think you can't go wrong with investing in really great footwear. And I think to recapture working out at home, things like that, there are some really affordable exercise tools that I think are your must-have. So resistance loops and resistance bands are two of my favorites. Adjustable dumbbells are also kind of what I consider a must-have toolbox item, because you do need to have that strength training component. Not only does it have that ability to prevent the decline in strength over time, but it has a metabolic effect as well. The more lean tissue you have, the more calories you burn at rest. It's more metabolically active than non-lean tissue. So having some way to strength train is really important. If you want to, it depends on how much you want to invest. So if you want to have a larger piece of equipment, something like an elliptical machine or a cycle, like a bike, is going to be really beneficial for you. But
Great.
Top of my list is footwear.
Great. Yes, I've got my favorite pair of shoes, tennis shoes.
Excellent. Yep.
And I did do the gait analysis, so that helped guide me to the right pair of shoes, and I love them. All right, awesome. So our next question: I have recently been diagnosed with arthritis. I'm used to a certain intensity with my workout. How can I break a good sweat while also staying mindful of my joints? Any tips?
Okay. So I think first I would advocate for swimming, trying those water-based exercises, because that has a sweatability factor just as much, in just a different way than other more traditional cardiovascular or cardiorespiratory exercises do. And always be mindful of that pain tolerance and where your body's at that day. It's going to look different every day, and it's okay. It's okay to accept where you're at. Your performance will look different every day. It's about what's optimal for you in that moment, that day, with the level of discomfort that you're feeling.
And then I'm going to tease it a little further. Now, if you've got somebody who doesn't like getting their hair wet, I'm thinking of a specific individual in my life. Okay. Any recommendations? What would be a good alternative?
So for something like that, absolutely. There are water aerobics classes that don't require you to submerge or anything like that. I would advocate for looking for something like that, or, just doing some yoga, some Pilates, something like that, that's a little bit less impactful than a traditional cardiovascular exercise that might involve, maybe walking would be too much for that individual on that day. But not all water classes will require you to swim lengths and things like that. So, that could certainly be an option too.
Awesome. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So the next question is, there are days where pain is so bad, I don't want to even get out of bed. On days like that, is it okay to take it easy, or should I still try to fit in some gentle movement of some kind?
So here's where the body scan is going to be invaluable. And if it's truly that's a pretty high pain level, if it's making that individual feel like, I just can't. And if you just can't, accept where you're at and be okay with it. Try to move your joints every so often, whether it looks like gentle arm circles, or maybe it's hip circles, maybe it's ankle rolling or something like that. Try to move those joints just to get them some movement, but do not engage in anything that's going to exacerbate that pain. It's just going to make you feel miserable. You'll compromise your form, and it's possible that you just incur another injury too. And that's not what we want. So if your body is telling you, listen, I can't today, then don't. Take that rest and be okay with it.
Thank you. Great. Our next question from the community is, my low back is often let me start that one again.
I gotcha.
The blooper reel. All right, the next one. My lower back is often in agony during and after exercise. Do you have any tips to protect my back during exercise while still ensuring I get a good workout?
That's a great question. Oh, gosh, low back pain is always such a concern, whether it's related to arthritis or otherwise. So the first thing, it's always really good to avoid high impact activities. So running, jumping, plyometrics, any kind of bouncing or ballistic movement, even Olympic lifts are going to be too much at that point. And I would not suggest that that would be an activity you'd fit in on that particular day. There are exercises that you can do for a population that deals with arthritis and obviously a population that doesn't. These are kind of universal, to make sure that you do some strengthening exercises for your core. So the abdominal wall and the low back. We often, when people talk about core, they think it's just the stomach, but it's not. It's the band of musculature that goes all around. And to some degree, it involves the hips as well. So making sure that you do some sort of core strengthening, core stabilization will help improve the strength of those muscles and could reduce that back pain. Things like the bird dog or plank exercises, even using a stability ball as your office chair instead of a traditional chair, because it does kind of force you to engage those postural muscles a little bit more. So you're not, doing this at the desk all day. Those are all things that you could do that could help potentially.
Great. And I'm thinking maybe I need a Post-it note that says sit up straight, engage my core.
Where's your posture? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's just those cues that help because it's easy to go here, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. Having severe arthritis in certain joints can prevent me from wanting to condition certain areas. For example, I have severe arthritis in my lower body joints. So I find often I focus on my upper body. Problem is that's not balanced. What are some ways I can work out my lower half while also minimizing pain? And I'll say this one came from me because so it was my lower joints. And then vice versa, if somebody has, where their lower joints are good, but it's the upper body. So how do we have that balance in place?
Yeah, no, really great question. It really is important to make sure that you're training the body in all of its dimensions. I would bring in the swimming and cycling and elliptical training example here because it offers that cardiorespiratory benefit. And it also offers the ability for you to be in some sort of rhythmic movement that requires the joints to be moving. Yoga is another option. There is a strengthening component to it. It's not the same as resistance training where you're lifting dumbbells or resistance bands or things like that. But nonetheless, it's a different type of strength that can be developed. And that would certainly be an activity that you could do for sure. Even something like light dancing that's not high impact could be a really great option. It teaches rhythm. Its respiratory benefit is there as well. But making sure that you do what you can to try to target all major muscle groups. And you don't have to do push-ups for it, but even just like light resistance bands, maybe you're doing some external rotation with your arms or, some tricep extensions or something like that. But then also looking at how you can reduce the weight bearing component. And that's why swimming and elliptical, a cycle would be really good for something like that.
Awesome. Great suggestions. All right. Our next question. Are there any tools or devices that can help reduce pressure off joints?
Oh, that's an awesome question. Yes. The short answer is yes. There are braces, there are canes, there are injections, there are all kinds of tools out there, whether they're external or there's some sort of pharmaceutical intervention. A person's need for something like that is most likely going to be best addressed by the physical therapist or their primary care provider, because they would have to write a prescription for something like that and help them identify the most appropriate brace and fit them for that brace. But there are certainly, special chairs, there are walkers, there are all kinds of things out there that can be assistive devices, certainly for people with more severe cases, more advanced cases of osteo, but then also those times that they're just flared up and really uncomfortable. But there are tools on the market, but it's best addressed. Like I would encourage someone, if it was a client of mine, let's get you into your doctor or physical therapist and let's get an assessment. So we really know what we're working with and what's going to be the best option for you.
Yeah, and I think you really drive home a really important point, which is one that I always talk about is, it's important to have that, it's a team approach to keeping I say moving and grooving, but it takes a team, so, working in partnership with your primary care physician, your rheumatologist, and a physical therapist can really help guide you. And using those, supportive devices can enable you to do things that you couldn't do, like, if it's lifting a weight, it offers you that support that you need.
Absolutely.
Somebody who lives with rheumatoid, I've lived with rheumatoid arthritis for over 50 years. So it's like,
it's old hat to you.
So, yeah. But, it's like sometimes I got to wear the brace on the knee because it's just not happy, but I can at least then still accomplish some of my, my exercise goals.
Exactly.
All right. Our next question. You ready, Dr. Erin?
I am.
All right. How does one find a personal trainer who has experience working with people with arthritis conditions?
Oh.
Are there specific credentials one should look for? What should I ask when interviewing potential trainers or speaking to, personal training managers at clubs and gyms?
That's a great question. I think it's one that needs to be asked more, and not just from this population, but all over, is being kind of choosy with the exercise professional that you select. So first, I'll just give one example. The ACE website does have like kind of a find a professional link that individuals can use, and they can search by country and then narrow within like a certain mile radius, for example. So if you're searching within the United States, you can put in your zip code and it'll pull up all the profiles of all of the ACE pros that have a current profile. Most of us will have a description of the population we work with. If we're a certain niche market, say somebody is more geared towards working with performance athletes, that might not be your choice. But most of us are going to have our profiles on there that will allow people to kind of discern who does what. To that end, if somebody does not have a description that's as robust, most of us have our contact information on there. And I would encourage people, shoot them a quick email or visit their website, however they direct you to get in touch with them, and ask them, this is who I am, and this is the condition that I live with and work with. So I want to know, is this the type of population you feel comfortable working with? Do you have the experience? Definitely look for somebody with the experience and the knowledge of certain guidelines. There are guidelines that differ based on the condition that we're working with. So if this is a musculoskeletal condition, if it was a prenatal or postpartum, there are certain guidelines for that population as well. Same thing if we're dealing with people with hypertension. So look for someone that's got that. But the biggest thing is making sure that you find an exercise professional that is certified and they have an accredited certification. So somebody through ACE, ACSM, any one of the organizations that are listed in my alphabet soup are all accredited examples. They're certainly not the only organizations that exist by any means, but they are accredited, meaning that there is an overseeing governing body that has said these credentialing agencies offer a robust enough certification system and exam that tells us these professionals have met a minimum competency in order to safely and effectively work with populations of apparently healthy populations. So that's really where I would start searching, and then also look at your local resources. So asking local gyms, YMCAs, clubs, studios, do you offer these services? If so, what are your personal trainers? Are they called personal trainers, or are they certified personal trainers? There's an entirely different class there. Certified personal trainers have gone through some sort of vetting system where we have had to demonstrate competency and skill level over and over and over again. We also have to have continuing education. We can't just get certified and then just be done. We have a cycle that we have to go through in order to remain current and relevant in our industry. Somebody who says they're a personal trainer but doesn't have any of that, ask for credentials. Ask. And a lot of professionals, if they're certified through ACE, NSCA, most of us will have the branding or the marketing associated with our credential. So just educate yourself. Don't just take their word for it that, oh, I'm a personal trainer, but are you? ask those questions, because you have to remember that you're investing in a service, and you want to be investing in a legitimate service. And you want to know that the person you're investing with is an individual, a professional that can help deliver the results that you need. And that's why there's a certification process in place and a system that keeps us current.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really great advice. And I'm going to remember, ask for certified. Yeah.
And if they say yes, ask through what organization are you certified?
Yeah.
A personal trainer that's gone through that vetting process is going to be more than happy to be like, I am certified through X.
Yeah.
We're proud of that because it's hard.
Yeah, you've done the work, and then you also, like you said, you continue to do the continuing education to keep yourself current and relevant, and in support of the clients you're working with.
Absolutely.
So benefit. Next question. You ready?
Yep.
How can a physical therapist help someone with arthritis who's either newly diagnosed or new to exercise?
Oh, good question. So physical therapists are amazing practitioners. Their scope of practice is much wider and much more robust, and they are very focused in rehabilitative treatment. And they can offer very targeted treatments, hot, cold therapy. They can offer, targeted massage. They can offer certain exercises. They can really work on strengthening. So a physical therapist is a great professional to work with. And I worked at a physical therapy clinic when I first started out in the industry, and it is amazing how many individuals we saw that had either RA or osteoarthritis. And really they focus on keeping those joints healthy, mobile, so that their condition, the side effects are limited. And they're not going to greatly impact activities of daily living. So absolutely, physical therapists can offer a whole host of modalities. And I urge people that if they do have osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis, go see one of them. An occupational therapist could potentially offer something very similar. So do your research. And if you have a rheumatologist, then certainly that person would know as well, but a primary care provider would be able to recommend, I think we should get you 8 weeks of physical therapy.
Yeah. And I would say take it, because especially someone who's newly diagnosed, you're inside of a very steep learning curve. So to work with a physical therapist, because you're learning now how to adjust to your new normal. So by working with them and then working with the personal trainer, you get the best of both worlds. So. Awesome. All right. Our next question. Do you have any safety and injury prevention tips when working out?
Okay. First one, stop any exercise if pain is present. Shut it down. Don't try to push through the pain. That's not what we want to do. And then yeah, exactly. That's one of the fitness myths out there that I have to constantly address with students. And it's a pretty interesting conversation. So just absolutely stop. If something hurts, don't continue to do it. Reduce the volume and intensity during periods of discomfort. And if you notice any next day tightness, reduce that volume and that intensity as well. It's often better to focus on the more frequent, lower, moderate intensity exercises versus, the harder, high impact, that type of thing that's just going to exacerbate the issue. Adequate warm-up. Probably the biggest thing, adequate warm-up and adequate cool down. So often for this population, we want to see a warm-up that's about 10 minutes. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's so important to move those joints and get the fluid moving, get the heart rate kind of increase that intramuscular temperature. So I can't stress the importance of a warm-up and a cool down enough. For sure, make sure those components are part of whatever exercise you do. And then if you are somebody that is active every day and you're exercising every day, switch up the modes. So don't always do an elliptical trainer every single day. Maybe you alternate it. Maybe you do an elliptical one day, a bike the next, and swimming, and then you do a couple of days of strengthening and Pilates or something like that. And I think lastly, making sure that you communicate with your doctor or whomever is your primary care provider to note any changes in your pain level, or if you're going to make any drastic changes to any activity routine, you have to communicate with them. And hopefully, if you are working with an exercise professional, there is a relationship between that exercise professional, or it's a physical therapist, and your primary care provider, that they can continually communicate. Because oftentimes, as a personal trainer, I would get directions from a physical therapist or a physician saying, this person should not do X. And that then guides my programming for them. And then I stay in constant contact. Like, this is where Jane's progress is today. This is how she was feeling. So just that communication piece is honestly a great safety and injury prevention tip.
Awesome. Next question. How to minimize post-workout soreness? Okay. I think we've all been there, but you've got those joints or the muscles that are speaking to you. So how much pain is acceptable after a workout versus knowing when you've just pushed too hard?
Right. Okay. So it's absolutely normal to have soreness, muscle soreness. It is not normal to have pain. There's a big difference between the two. For muscle soreness, it's very common. The more in shape a person is and the longer they've been exercising, chances of them experiencing consistent muscle soreness is pretty reduced. It still happens. So the soreness is there because your body is responding to the stimulus that you placed upon it, that demand, that overload, that sort of volume of work that perhaps it wasn't used to before. Totally normal, expect it, but pain should not be part of the process. So if you are experiencing pain, I would absolutely say, listen, and say this to my doctor, I did this yesterday and here's where I'm feeling it. And what do you suggest? Because the last thing you want to do is exacerbate the pain. And again, that's where being very mindful of your pain tolerance and the discomfort level and what is normal for you versus what really seems out of the ordinary. But there's a difference between next day soreness, stiffness, and pain. Soreness and stiffness, yeah, we kind of get that. Like, we get sore and stiff if we've maybe walked an additional mile because that's an overload. That's an additional stimulus. But if pain is present, you need to have a conversation with your doctor.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And our next question for the runners in our audience, what are some do's and don'ts to protect painful joints? And is there ever a time that you should avoid running because of arthritis?
That's a really interesting question. I know a lot of people who run and they have arthritis. So the first thing is, from an exercise guideline standpoint, running is really generally not recommended as the go-to exercise for someone with osteo, because it is a high impact, high intensity activity. So really, you want to make sure that you avoid engaging in that until you can do so pain-free, which takes some time. It involves probably some physical therapy. It may even involve some kind of brace unit or something like that. But when you get to that pain-free point, then you could consider re-entering at like a lower level, lower volume. Making sure you have supportive footwear and making sure that you are choosing a running surface that offers some sort of absorbency factor. Something like running on concrete versus running on dirt, a lot different. Running on sand, things like that. That's lower impact on those joints. But generally speaking, as a personal trainer, I would not advise my client to continue with running until they could do so pain-free. But have that conversation with a physician and be like, if running is your life's blood, that's something to consider. And we just want to make sure that however you're choosing to engage in that particular exercise, that you're doing so in such a way that it limits the negative impact. So.
Yeah, because you don't want to end up doing more harm in the long run, and I know we didn't really talk, but when we were just creating the content for this session,
Right.
but it's like, if it's a passion and it's love, and how do you shift then to learning to learn something or embrace something new, right?
Right. There is water running. That could be a great rehabilitative option as well. And it's so much harder than running outside.
I can imagine. Oh my God.
Yeah, you're fighting the fact that there's no gravity. There's nothing anchoring you to the earth. It's as close to zero gravity as possible, like I said. But it's also you're having to, you can't go as fast, and you're running through that water. You're still getting resistance from that water, from that tension, and then you're still moving those joints. So that could certainly be something to try. Not saying it's the cure-all or it's going to appeal to everyone, but the biggest thing is pain should not be present. And if it is, then we need to have a deeper conversation about what's causing it, what activities do we need to modify, and then getting that physician involved.
Great answer. So, Dr. Erin, this conversation has just been so insightful and helpful. I really, I think I know I've learned a lot, and hopefully our viewers have as well. So in closing, are there any words of wisdom or motivational mantras you'd like to share with our audience?
Oh, goodness. Where to begin? No, one of the things I've learned over the number of years I've been in this industry and the number of clients I've had and the situations I've seen is that there's this notion of perfection. It's not about perfection. It's about progress and consistency. That's what it comes down to. And we will never achieve that state of perfection because our best looks different every day. And we have to normalize that. We have to be okay with that and knowing that our best is as fluid as anything else in life. And that's okay. And so it's important for people, whether they have osteoarthritis, RA, whether they're fortunate enough not to deal with that condition. You have to remember that celebrating every movement you make is really important. And that's where the win is. Did you move today? Great. If you didn't, why? Well, it hurt too much. That's okay. Celebrate having those boundaries, but making sure that you understand that your best is going to look different every day. And you can't really compare yourself. It's just making it intentional that, okay, I'm going to do something healthy for myself today. And maybe that looks like rest. We've made rest a reward rather than a right. And that is why we see overtraining. That's why we see burnout. That's why we see all of those things. So maybe what's healthy for you is to just take the day off, sleep in a little bit, but maybe it's to hydrate, maybe it's to meditate, maybe it's something like that. So just honoring the place that you're at, I think is really important.
Yeah, I love that. And underscoring the consistency, because I've been on a weight loss journey this last year. And, it's really easy to focus on where I didn't do, right? Or those weeks where the scale went up. But when I sat down and looked, I've released 30 pounds this last year. But, in the moment, it was like, oh God, there, I gained 2 more pounds this week, or the scale is stuck and it's not moving. But, if you go back and look at the progress, it's like, holy camole, I lost 30 pounds.
It's huge. It's huge. And so I think getting to that place where you honor yourself and the progress that you've made is absolutely reason to celebrate.
And it's that, but it was like that little, the incremental steps that it took, to get there. So thank you. We appreciate you coming in and taking your time to be with us today and to educate our community. Hope you, to our viewers, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Ask the Professionals, and we invite you to come join the conversation at the Arthritis Foundation. I do want to underscore a couple of different, not more than a few different resources. We have webinars that we do on a regular basis, and many of them have been targeted about different aspects of physical activity. So you can go over to arthritis.org/webinars. If you're the same thing, we've got podcasts, so arthritis.org/podcast. As I mentioned earlier, the Yes tool is a great new resource that we've got up on our site with updated videos. The Vim app is also another great resource that you can download and literally have on your phone, which if you're like me, it's almost surgically attached. It's always within reach, right? So you can jump on in. And yeah, those are just a few of our different programs that are available. We also have the online community. We have our Connect groups, our Insights program. So we invite you to come visit arthritis.org and jump in and learn more. So thank you so much for viewing this. And it's been great having you on, Dr. Erin.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.